Welcome to Unshackled Wisdom. I'm Katya. Great to have you here. To all the new subscribers, thank you for joining, and I look forward to sharing more of my transformation from a diagnosis of cancer last year into how I feel now as a radiant, vital woman in my 7th decade who really haven't felt this good for a long time. So I wanted to first just go back to last year after the cancer diagnosis I had and how I adopted a high-fat carnivore lifestyle after doing an enormous amount of research, and particularly from Professor Seafried, but also other people that I'd happened to have connected with who had eliminated their cancers through also having high-fat carnivore. So I did this 6 months from June, the middle of June, till the end of December, and it was just phenomenal. It restored a lot of the systems in my body that were really struggling, particularly my liver, my gut, and also my nervous system, cognitive abilities, my physical fitness, which was just phenomenal, lung capacity, just went on and on, of course, teeth and all sorts of other things I've talked about in other videos. So over the last couple of months, I have decided to bring in a couple of foods that I felt my body was needing. And throughout last year, I'd also have some lemon juice in the morning with a bit of bicarb soda mixed into that, and some sea moss. So that was an addition. But as far as and these are all zero carb, by the way, so minimal with the lemon juice. But so where I'm at now, I was starting to crave some of these foods: avocado, sauerkraut, which is something I've eaten for a good few years, and also some cucumbers. So I found those foods to be okay with me, in as much as it didn't bring back any inflammation. And as a woman who's in my 7th decade, I'm very tuned in to not diminishing the level of health that I have now, particularly having so much freedom from joint pain, easier recovery from exercise. So these foods were quite good, and it showed to me how the strict carnivore, high-fat carnivore, had restored my gut health. I wasn't getting bloating after I was eating these foods. In fact, they digested really well. And they kind of, I guess they satisfied a bit of a craving for a little bit more liquid in my food, So, which of course cucumbers provided, and sauerkraut does as well. So I guess there's a sea of information out there. There's people who've gone ketovore, which is a kind of, again, low carb, but introducing maybe onions. Avocado seems to be popular, and maybe some probiotic foods as well. So as I've gone along over a couple of months, I've brought in some other things, but I found that they did cause some bloating. And look, when you've been free of that, free of any gas and wind and just, abdominal discomfort, you don't want to bring that back. So this is where I'm at now. I look forward to having eggs in the morning. I do have some black coffee occasionally. I'm going back to a little bit of green tea because I find that just keeps me at a nice even keel. Coffee now, it's interesting because when I was high-fat carnivore, it really didn't elevate my cortisol. Like I didn't feel racy or have heart palpitations or difficulty sleeping. None of that was happening. But since I've brought in some of these other foods, it doesn't sit as well with me as it used to. So, I have it occasionally, and then I go back to some green tea, and I back and forwards, So we'll see how that goes. One thing that I have brought back is some gym work, and I did have a trainer who specializes in senior people, and getting them to be aware of functionality in their body and what might be decreasing in them, particularly flexibility, tight calves, which is quite common, hips and knees that rotate, that the way your gait is now that you're older, all these things that they observe, and consequently make up a program for you that's going to address that, so you keep your core strength, which is what it's all about, and upper arm strength, which is something that I really wanted to concentrate on, because that's essential. As you get older, you want to keep that grip ability, and of course be able to lift things easily, and the leg and core strength, which is all to do with balance, which I've talked about before. These things are really important. So I bring those in every day, and it becomes a discipline. I've actually mixed up my daily routine, because as I've become, let's say, I'm freer in not adopting so much rigidity, but also, bringing in a schedule now that serves me better than it used to. And I think this is something that we need to do regularly, is assess where we're at and look at maybe mixing things up, because bodies love it when you mix things up a bit, and your daily routines, right? So I usually get up at around 5. There was a period where I was getting up at 3 or 2:30, and I'm writing a book currently, Unshackled Wisdom, which is going to chronicle, I guess, the journey I've been on and how I became, I guess, a different identity than I was through this whole process, and hopefully, of course, to inspire other people. But so through those early hours of morning, I found those to be quite productive. It just gave me that almost sacred time where everything's quiet outside, and you can really just get into a space where your own thoughts, your direction for the day is all that matters. And of course, I'd use certain, they're kind of affirmations, but they're music along with that would really, really set the tone for the day. And so this has been wonderful. And these are things like, everything works out perfectly for the day. What kind of great surprises are going to show up for me today? What wonderful miracles will occur? And generally just being in a state of love and joy and, goodwill towards other people. And surprising how much of that just keeps coming back to you. It's wonderful. So I've also started to have some eggs in the morning. At one time, when I was doing this strict 6-month carnivore, I wouldn't eat the first meal till about 2. Started off at 12 and then I went to 2, because part of the regime was to bring in some intermittent fasting, also to get my body back into homeostasis and a healthy way of being, and that worked brilliantly. But now I find I've been going to the gym, doing a few weights. I like to have a couple of eggs, 2 or 3 eggs in the morning, and then I have a meal probably been about mid-afternoon, and another one 5, 6, because I'm going to bed earlier than I used to, which is great too. So all these things have all changed, and of course, as we age, a lot of people find that their sleep changes quite dramatically. They're waking up, anything from 2 a.m. till 5, and they want to get extra sleep, but they can't go back to sleep. Their minds start becoming very active, and the body systems start kicking into action, and cortisol rises, and they already start the day. So I just go with it, just go with it, because we're always in flux. Nothing's permanent, chops and changes. So anyway, this is where I'm at now, and it's really a good place. If I do bring in other vegetables, I can only have a tiny bit. But I'm quite happy now having what I'm having. I have cut back on the quantity of meat I was eating, having a little bit more wild fish that I can get. Fresh sardines too has been something I've brought in. But of course, it's predominantly higher protein. And as I've said in other videos, most people are not getting enough protein over 60, 65. Their protein intake actually decreases. But we need more protein the older we become. So, you know, I make sure that I have protein every meal. And, you know, ultimately I'd like to bring in a few other things that I enjoy. But of course it'll be in the lettuces and things like that. But as it is now, a little bit of onion, some spices, they're all going great and I feel fantastic. So I just want to give you that update, and I'd love to know if anyone else is, you know, sort of brought in some low carb vegetables and are still, you know, high fat. When I say high fat, they're still bringing in a lot of fat into their body, whether it be some saturated fat or through avocado. But most people, saturated fat, and particularly for women, they need it for their hormones, as I've said before. Yeah, having that also daily. So I still have butter, not as much as I used to. But yeah, I've just got the great balance. So what I want to suggest to you all is to tune in more to your own intuition, because there's a sea of information out there. Some of it is so confusing, and people end up being so confused themselves, and they just throw their arms up and go, what am I going to eat? And really, we need to be bringing our attention and focus back onto our own bodies and get to know ourselves, know thyself, first and foremost, because whatever other people doing out there, we have to just disregard that and make ourselves the laboratory that we focus on and see how we react to certain things. And obviously, if we want to keep a good level of health, flexibility, interest in life, keep our mind sharp, you know, we need to keep away from all these processed foods all the time. Don't even touch them. I wouldn't even think of touching them. And that's the great thing about myself. I've, in as much as most of my life, I have not been a person who's eaten fast foods, or I haven't even gone near them, you know. So for those who know, you know, I had the veganism and going on for a long time, but it was all whole foods. So if we can just keep on to the whole foods and really, you know, be observant about how things react in your body, and keep up the exercise. It's so important to be moving all the time, particularly when you're older. It's very easy to become more sedentary, because the more sedentary you become, the less you feel motivated to do anything. And I've been there. So you have to have that discipline and push yourself that little bit more. And next thing, it becomes a habit. You actually find that you feel less than you know, the self you want to be when you don't do it. So this is how everything starts. We discard these habits that have been running our lives and you know, taking over in some ways, and we're establishing new ones. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And yeah, let me know in the comments below if how you're traveling, if you're still doing carnivore and how it is for you, and if you've introduced some other foods and how they work. All right, look forward to being with you again soon. Okay, have a fabulous day. Bye for now.